This is Cheryl Levitt. In 1964, Cheryl got married and ended up having 2 children with her husband, her son Bart and her daughter Susie. Shortly after Susie's birth in 1973, Cheryl and her husband divorced. Later that same year, Cheryl's little sister Deborah moved to Springfield, Missouri, and Cheryl was not far behind. Before long, Cheryl became a cosmetologist with a loyal clientele, which resulted in her making good money and settling into life in Springfield. Her sister eventually moved back to Washington, but Cheryl stayed. It seemed like her life was on the up and up. 6 years after her sister had moved away, Cheryl and her second husband divorced. Cheryl lost her house and, according to her sister, she struggled at first. Eventually, she got a new house for herself and Susie. Her son, Bart, had already moved out. Cheryl's sister has said that this move symbolized a fresh start for Cheryl and Susie. Their lives were becoming stable once again. Susie has been described by her cousin as fashionable, cool, independent, and tough. She was also said to be extremely close to her mother, and she even wanted to pursue cosmetology, following in Cheryl's footsteps. In 1992, Susie graduated high school. Her cousin and aunt both wanted to celebrate with her, but her cousin had joined the Navy and was called back to base. In a cruel twist of fate, this would be the last time Cheryl and Susie's relatives would ever see them. On June 6, 1992, Susie graduated and attended multiple graduation parties with her friend, Stacy McCall. At the last minute, they decided to spend the night at Susie's house with Cheryl. Susie and Stacy had plans to meet some friends to go to a water park the next morning, but they never showed up. Their friends went to Cheryl's house to check on them, but nobody was there. Eventually, the police were called and the investigation began. The responding officer stated that the house showed no signs of a struggle. However, the 3 women's personal property was all still accounted for. Nothing had been stolen, not their purses, money, clothing, keys, or cigarettes. Even the family dog was still present. Because of this, the immediate theory was that the 3 women had been abducted. Typically during missing persons investigations, the theory of runaways is at least considered. This theory seems especially unlikely in this case, given how the women left behind all of their money, their vehicles, and even their dog. According to all of the information we have, the 3 women had no reason to run away from home. The 2 younger girls had just graduated from high school, a major milestone in a young person's life, and both Susie and her mother were still very close with their extended family. According to Cheryl's sister, Stacy McCall was a sweetheart who was very talented. There were no signs of any unordinary struggles in her life that would prompt her to run away either. The community in Springfield, Missouri is reportedly a tight-knit one. This event left a lot of Springfield residents shaken. By all accounts, Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy had all been living normal and happy lives. An abduction was the last thing anyone would expect. There's something to be said for tight-knit communities. Volunteer search parties were formed, posters were distributed, and billboards were put up. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, the Springfield 3 have never been found. There have been numerous tips over the years in regards to this case. Cheryl's sister has said that someone apparently saw a green van near the home on the morning of June 7th, the same morning the 3 women went missing. This eyewitness supposedly saw Susie driving the van. A search for that vehicle was conducted, but did not result in any further leads. The biggest lead came from the arrest of a man in 1988. Robert Cox had murdered a Walt Disney World employee while on vacation in Florida. In 1989, Cox appealed his conviction on grounds of insufficient evidence, and he was released from prison. He was living in Springfield, Missouri in 1992, when the Springfield 3 went missing. In 1995, he was arrested a second time, this time for holding a child at gunpoint. Thankfully, this second conviction did not end in his release. In 1996, a reporter named Dennis Graves interviewed Cox in prison, where he stated that he knew the Springfield 3 were dead. He said that it wasn't his theory, but that he knew for a fact. He also said that he was at home in bed on the night of the abduction. Charges were never filed against Cox for this case, although he is still currently serving a life sentence for a different crime. Cheryl's sister believes Cox was responsible for the disappearance. These 3 women have still never been forgotten about to this day. Almost every year, Springfield has a vigil for them. What do you think? Do you agree with Cheryl's sister that Robert Cox was responsible for this disappearance? What about any other theories? The unfortunate truth is that we will likely never know what happened for sure. Ada Harradine was a 39-year-old mother of 2 boys who lived in an upscale neighborhood in Elkhart, Indiana. She was a devout Catholic who has been described as caring, down-to-earth, quiet, and kind. She was always involved at her local YMCA and her church, and she was always there for her children. So, on May 8, 1985, when Ada suddenly stopped being there for anyone, there was cause for concern. According to the investigators, Ada was seen by witnesses in her backyard on the day of her disappearance, approximately 10 minutes before her son's school bus dropped him off. It was during that small window of time when she was abducted. The authorities have reported that there were no signs whatsoever of foul play or a struggle in the driveway or backyard. It seemed Ada had simply vanished without a trace. Heartbreakingly, her son Jeff has recounted his experience that day. He said that he remembers getting off the school bus and thinking that it was extremely odd for his mother to not be waiting for him there. As I said before, Ada was a very devout mother, and she was suddenly gone. The investigators have stated that nothing was missing from inside the house. Nothing was out of place or abnormal in any way. There was only one clue for them to go on. Ada's niece recounted that, earlier that day, her and Ada had heard a strange noise from inside the house. The specific details of this noise are unknown, but Ada's niece has simply described it as out of the ordinary. To this day, the authorities believe that this mysterious noise was somehow connected to Ada's disappearance. 3 years after she vanished, Ada's body was discovered. A group of mushroom hunters who had been searching an area in rural Cass County called the police when they found a set of bones along a hillside. Ada's wedding ring was found with the skeleton, but no clothes or shoes were found. An examination of the remains revealed the cause of death to be blunt force trauma. Her skull and jaw had been fractured. Several rocks roughly the size of a human fist were found near the remains, and it has been theorized that one of these could have been the murder weapon. The authorities are not positive, however. It's possible that Ada's body was dumped on that hillside after her death. The lead investigator has since stated that he believes the killer has some kind of special connection to that hillside for some unknown, sickening reason. The authorities have stated that there were several persons of interest in Ada's case at the beginning of the investigation, but since then they have determined that they will not be tunnel-visioned and will instead examine every possibility. There were rumors initially that Ada's disappearance was connected to the mob, but those rumors were investigated and never substantiated. A witness told the police that they saw a blue car parked outside of Ada's house on the day of her disappearance, and they also reportedly saw a man who was wearing a hat talking to Ada. This man has unfortunately never been identified. To this day, Ada Harradine's death is still unsolved. Perhaps the creepiest part of this whole case is the noise that Ada's niece reported hearing. What was it, and who or what caused it? It's a chilling question to consider. Hopefully, at some point, Ada's family can receive some answers about what happened to her and who was responsible. We can only hope that the killer is brought to justice.